It's only 49 people. That's nothing. My mother, Evelyn, declared this as she scanned the living room of my Manhattan apartment, evaluating it as if she were appraising merchandise. In her hand was the guest list for my younger sister Jasmine's engagement party, which had been officially decided for the following night. The location was right here, at my home. And the following day happened to be my 32nd birthday. My birthday. My name is Haley. I'm the conveniently available eldest daughter of this family. Well, it's the Collins family we're dealing with. Logan and Jasmine are finally getting engaged. Haley, I know it's sudden, but at least this apartment has a nice view, so we're going to use it. The entire reason this apartment even existed was because years ago, Jasmine had declared, "It's embarrassing not to have a place to stay when most of my friends live in Manhattan." Upon hearing that, my mother decided to show off, and without consulting me at all, she immediately signed the lease for this place. This will be Jasmine's base. Haley, you'll take care of everything. Since you need a place to live anyway, I'll allow you to stay here in return. Oh, and of course you'll be paying the mortgage. Think of it as a kind of maintenance fee. That was how she had so generously informed me. But I wasn't simply following orders. I had hired a lawyer and used the fact that I was the one paying the mortgage to my advantage, legally transferring the ownership of the apartment entirely into my name. My mother had signed the contract without realizing it, thinking it was just paperwork about the mortgage payments. I was paying with the money I'd earned through my own hard work, so it was only natural that I secured that right. I did it for the day when I would finally drive my family out of this luxurious cage and make it truly my castle. This place was not a burden forced upon me by my family, but a strategic asset for my future. Cooking, cleaning, and serving the guests. My mother demanded that I handle all of it by myself and without pay, as if it were my duty. To her, my ability to do these things flawlessly was as natural and unquestionable as air or water. Come to think of it, she had always been that way. She was excellent at putting on appearances in social settings, but utterly terrible at the work behind the scenes, especially housework. Because I had been good with my hands since childhood, I became the ghostwriter for her home parties back when I was still a student. While she chatted elegantly with guests in the kitchen, I was the one making canapes, checking the oven temperature and clearing dirty glasses. And seeing me do all that, instead of praising me, she would sneer and say, "Are you planning to become a maid or something since you're getting so good at that?" She has no idea how deeply those words pierced my heart. The irony is that those very words would end up changing my destiny. I was supposedly the one who had quit the investment bank a few years ago because I couldn't keep up anymore. Then how, in their minds, do they explain the mortgage payments for this apartment or the payments for Jasmine's car loan all covered by the unemployed me? The answer is simple. They believe it's all thanks to the past fortune I accumulated back when I was a banker. And I'm the pitiful eldest daughter who's been slowly eating away at that fortune to survive. That's why it's considered my natural duty to spend my endless free time and the savings that will supposedly run out someday for the sake of my brilliant younger sister Jasmine. They've never once wondered why that savings never seems to run dry after all these years. They pretend not to notice the contradiction that their luxurious lifestyle is built upon money that should have run out long ago. It's far more convenient for them that way. The luxury car Jasmine drives around is the ultimate symbol of that selfish logic. Originally, it was a gift from me to celebrate her college graduation and coming of age. Back then, I still believed in the illusion of family. Thank you, Haley. I love you. I had wanted to see the innocent smile on her face, so I surprised her by taking her to the showroom. But that act of kindness quickly transformed into something they viewed as a natural entitlement. If Jasmine's going to associate with the Collins family, a car like this is obviously necessary. Well done, Haley. My mother pretended to praise my decision, but in reality, she only saw it as a tool to satisfy Jasmine's vanity. Before I knew it, Jasmine stopped even saying thank you, and she began billing me for gas and insurance as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Those expenses have been included in the family's budget as obvious costs that were to be covered by my so-called past fortune. The truth is, I left because I'd had enough of the brutal working environment and wanted to start my own business. But even if I told them that, they would only laugh at me. They'd say, "There's no way you could ever do something like that." So I kept playing the role of the useless eldest daughter they wanted me to be. If it's for the successful Jasmine, then of course the useless me has to be the one to sacrifice herself. That was the unshakable rule of this family. Deep inside my heart, a wire that had been stretched to its limit snapped with a dull sound. It was the moment the last fortress, which had endured years of pressure, finally collapsed. With a frozen expression, I stared back at my mother. She had no way of knowing that beneath my emotionless mask, magma-like anger was boiling furiously. And then, with a voice stripped of all emotion, I answered with just one word. Okay. Yes, that's the spirit. I'm glad you're quick about it. My mother nodded in satisfaction and patted me on the shoulder. She had no idea that behind those words lay a fiery declaration of separation. That okay was not a sign of submission. It was a quiet declaration of war against years of domination. After my mother left like a storm, a false silence returned to the room. On the floor lay the guest list for 49 people that she had left behind, along with scribbled menu notes like, "Make sure to serve the finest champagne to the Collins family." But I didn't even bother to pick them up. Instead, I walked straight to the walk-in closet of my bedroom. I pulled out 2 large suitcases that had been stored away in the back and spread them open on the bed. What I took out was not an apron, but a sharply tailored business suit. A silk blouse, perfectly ironed, and from the hidden safe in the closet, I retrieved a leather briefcase. Inside was a thick stack of contracts embossed with the logo of Sterling Home Solutions, my company. A thriving housekeeping service business with 30 employees, serving Fortune 500 executives and celebrities, and known as one of the most in-demand companies in New York. The irony was undeniable. While my family treated me like a maid, I had turned an actual maid service into a massive business. Including Sterling in the company name had been no coincidence. It was a quiet expression of my ambition to one day have the real Collins family as clients. Or better yet, to stand as their equal in business. I, the one they had always scorned as a failure, had built that coveted name into a powerful brand with my own hands. When I opened my laptop, an email from my assistant awaited me with the final confirmation. Your flight to Honolulu departs at 7 a.m. tomorrow. The final contract meeting at the Four Seasons Hotel is scheduled for 3 p.m. The other party strongly wishes to meet directly with you, the CEO. This was a multi-million-dollar contract that would shape the future of my company. Exclusive service provision for an entire Hawaiian resort chain. If I secured this deal, my company would leap from being the dominant force on the East Coast to a nationwide powerhouse. It would be the perfect way to celebrate my birthday. I took out a sheet of fine stationery and began writing with my fountain pen. It wasn't out of anger or sadness. I carved only the cold, hard facts into that letter. This wasn't revenge. This was my first and last coup d'etat to reclaim control over my own life. I quietly placed the letter on the console table by the entrance. Next to it, I set down the house keys and the family card that would never be used again. On the morning of my birthday, which also happened to be the day of Jasmine's engagement party, I got into a taxi bound for the airport. Even in the early hours, JFK Airport's first-class lounge buzzed with a quiet energy. As I listened to the boarding announcement, I took a sip of hot coffee. By then, my mother and Jasmine were probably at the apartment, fuming. My phone already showed over a dozen missed calls and hysterical messages like, "This isn't funny. Where are you?" and "The guests are coming." But I merely glanced at the screen before switching it to silent mode. From their messages, I could picture them standing helplessly in front of the apartment door. They were probably ringing the intercom without any response, rattling the doorknob impatiently, and furiously typing out angry messages to me. They'd completely forgotten they had the master key, letting their emotions run wild instead. The idea of calmly assessing the situation simply doesn't exist in those two, and that's exactly why they hadn't noticed the letter still sitting inside the apartment. They didn't know yet. They didn't know about the letter I'd left behind. They didn't know that this single sheet of stationery was a bomb that would upend their entire world. On that little sheet were the 15 years I had devoted to them and a declaration of my new life ahead. Dear Mom and Jasmine, if you're reading this letter, it means you've already noticed that I'm gone. I'm sorry to surprise you, but I can no longer keep playing the role of your maid. I know you think I've been a failure ever since I supposedly got fired from my job a few years ago and have been looking for work ever since. But the truth is different. 5 years ago, I founded a company called Sterling Home Solutions. Ironically, it's a housekeeping and concierge service company. Today, it has grown into one of the most successful businesses in New York, employing over 30 people. Right now, as you read this, I'm on a plane to Hawaii for a crucial contract that will shape the future of my company. And most importantly, starting today, I will no longer be paying off Jasmine's car loan. And about the apartment you're standing in. This place is legally 100% my personal property. Your luxurious lifestyle has been supported all along by the earnings of the failure daughter you've always looked down on. Don't rely on me anymore. Take care of your party yourselves. And once the party is over, leave my house immediately. I've already arranged for the locks to be changed tomorrow morning. Any stay beyond that will be considered trespassing, and I will call the police. Sincerely, Haley. I gazed out the window at the runway. The airplane began to move slowly. What lay ahead wasn't just a business trip. It was a farewell to the past and a takeoff toward the future. When I finished my presentation in the executive boardroom of the Four Seasons Hotel in Hawaii, in front of the resort chain's top executives, the room erupted in enthusiastic applause. A multi-million-dollar exclusive contract. It was the moment when 5 years of hard work were finally recognized across the entire nation. Magnificent, Haley. Your proposal has far exceeded our expectations. I shook the resort CEO's extended hand firmly. Then I greeted the executives, excused myself, and hurried back to my hotel room. I wanted to see everything with my own eyes. The exact moment the long years of domination came to an end. I opened my laptop and accessed the cloud recordings from the apartment's security system. Of course, I had installed cameras in the unit. Not out of paranoia, but out of foresight born from years of experience. Once those two realized I wasn't there, they were bound to spiral into hysteria, and there was no telling what they might do. I needed to keep an exact record of whatever happened in this apartment, which legally belonged to me. What appeared on the screen was an absurd, pathetic farce that exceeded even my expectations. In the footage, my mother Evelyn and my sister Jasmine stood frozen in shock. The agreed time had come and gone, and I hadn't appeared. Their calls went unanswered. Their frustration peaked, and they used the master key to barge into the apartment, only to find a spotless, perfectly organized space devoid of any sign of life. How far does she have to go to make a fool of us? My mother's voice trembled with rage. At that moment, Jasmine noticed the letter I'd left on the table by the entrance. Mom, look. Evelyn tore the envelope open roughly and began to read the letter. Line by line, as her eyes moved down the page, her face was drained of color. Jasmine, peeking over her shoulder, stood with her mouth half open in disbelief. CEO? Sterling Home Solutions? No way, this is Haley, impossible. At first, Jasmine thought her sister had lost her mind. Haley, the failure, the clumsy one, the sister who was always cleaning up their messes. She's stopping the loan payment? What did she say? Evelyn's voice was no longer angry. It was filled with pure confusion and fear. Snapping back to reality, Jasmine grabbed her phone and, with trembling fingers, typed the company's name into a search bar. The screen displayed a special feature article from the Wall Street Journal. Beneath the headline, "Built from Scratch, a Made in America Dream," there was a photo of her sister. Familiar, yet showing a confident smile they had never seen before. The article was filled with praise for her business acumen. There was even a comment from a famous actor who was one of her clients, albeit anonymously. No way. Jasmine's whisper was nearly a scream. The sister she had always looked down on had long since succeeded in the world they had been desperately groveling to enter. This is your fault. Their mother suddenly grabbed Jasmine. This happened because you just had to bring the Collins family into this. You're always showing off, always trying to act above your station. This is what happens when you pretend to be something you're not. My fault. You're the one who told me to throw the party. You're the one who always said it was only natural to use Haley. You said, just let her handle it, that's all she's good for. All the time. What did you just say? How dare you speak to your mother that way? Then what are we going to do? People will be here any minute. There's no food, no drinks, nothing. And then the footage reached its climax. The recorded audio picked up their ugly blame game, but their shouting match was abruptly cut off by the merciless chime of the intercom. On the screen, I saw both Evelyn and Jasmine freeze in place. The guests, the Collins family, had already arrived. The two of them exchanged panicked glances. The party time was closing in. 49 guests. The apartment that was supposed to serve as the glamorous party venue, now looked to them like a silent stage set, one that mercilessly reflected their own foolishness. In the chaos of the living room, Evelyn and Jasmine stood there, completely at a loss. When they opened the door in a panic, a woman with an unmistakably elegant aura stepped in from outside the camera's blind spot. It was none other than Samantha Collins, the mother of Jasmine's fiancé. I unconsciously leaned closer to the screen. "Well, Evelyn, Jasmine, congratulations." Samantha greeted them with a pleasant smile, but her eyes quickly took in the strange atmosphere of the living room. I followed her gaze as it swept around the room. "This is a lovely apartment, but is the party about to start? Or is there some kind of trouble?" "Oh, well, there's been a little mix-up. The catering is on its way right now. Yes, it seems there's some traffic on the road." Evelyn blurted out a desperate lie. At that moment, Samantha's eyes happened to fall on the smartphone Jasmine was clutching tightly. The screen was still open to the CEO introduction page of Sterling Home Solutions. "Oh my, what a coincidence. Are you a fan of Sterling Home Solutions too?" I let out a dry laugh as I heard Samantha casually say the name of my company. This was where the real showtime began. I absolutely adore the CEO of that company. I'm deeply impressed not only by their attention to aesthetics, but also by their management philosophy, which considers the well-being of their staff. Their commitment to confidentiality and their ability to anticipate client needs is extraordinary. I've never met them, but their skill is the real thing. Evelyn's and Jasmine's faces were rapidly drained of color on the screen. The person they most wanted to impress turned out to be an ardent admirer of the daughter they had always scorned. It was the ultimate irony, a cruel blade of truth pressing against their throats. Evelyn forced a stiff smile as she responded to Samantha's words. "Yes, it's a wonderful company. We were, actually considering using their services ourselves." Samantha raised an eyebrow slightly at their clumsy answer. She had a sharp eye for authenticity. The obsequious smiles on their faces, the strange tension in the room. Even through the screen, I could sense that her intuition was telling her something was wrong. "Yes, I've heard that the CEO is a remarkably talented person, yet so humble that she never seeks the spotlight. She's known for being extremely private, never revealing any personal details. Her name was Haley, wasn't it? Haley!" The moment that name echoed through the living room, the two figures on the screen froze completely. That unnatural silence was a louder confirmation than any words could have been. Samantha had grasped the full scope of the farce unfolding before her. She rose slowly and spoke clearly, to no one in particular, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. "Evelyn, your daughter's name was Haley as well, wasn't it? And if I recall correctly, the way you described your eldest daughter was something like a bit slow to catch on and still hasn't found her path. The image you painted and the CEO Haley I know, well, there seems to be a rather a colossal gap between the two." Her cold, cutting voice rang out like a judge delivering a verdict. I might have been waiting for this very moment for years. It's been quite an interesting experience to meet the family of a business person I deeply respect in such a manner. However, I don't make a habit of wasting my time with unprofessional people. I'll be sure to tell Logan to think carefully about this matter. The Collins family values honesty above all else. With those words, Samantha turned on her heel and left the apartment without a backward glance. Her departure was like the trigger that burst the dam. The other guests, sensing exactly what had happened, began leaving the apartment one after another like scattering spiders. All that remained were Evelyn, who collapsed onto the sofa as if her legs had given out, and Jasmine, who stood frozen, staring at a single spot on the floor. In the silence, Jasmine muttered in a trembling voice, "Should we order pizza?" At those words, her mother let out a sob. The Collins family party ended with pizza. Could there be a more fitting conclusion? I quietly closed my laptop. On the screen was the narrow, suffocating past, while before my eyes stretched the endlessly blue ocean. The striking contrast between the two spoke more eloquently than words ever could about the beginning of my new life. Then I picked up my smartphone and called Samantha Collins. "Haley, I've been expecting your call." Her voice carried a warmth that went beyond that of a mere business partner. "Miss Collins, I just reviewed the security footage from my apartment. I must apologize for my family's behavior earlier." "There's no need to apologize, Haley. In fact, I should be the one thanking you." Samantha laughed softly, then continued. I'm sorry for what happened to your family, but Haley, I'm convinced now. Your professionalism bloomed entirely through your own efforts, despite the harsh environment you were in. I truly respect people like you. And then she made an astonishing proposal. Separate from this resort contract, I'd like to introduce you to a world-renowned hotel group that I represent as a client. Your company deserves a much bigger stage. After hanging up the phone, I stood for a while, letting the warm Hawaiian breeze wash over me. The image of my collapsing family back in New York and the brilliant future I had seized here. The contrast between them announced the start of my new life with dazzling clarity. When I returned to New York, what I found were the ruins of a false kingdom that had crumbled overnight. The story of Samantha Collins leaving the engagement party had spread rapidly among my relatives and through the tight-knit business community. Mrs. Evelyn tried to deceive the Collins family by pretending to be her daughter. They say she treated her real daughter like a maid. The rumors grew wilder with each retelling, far beyond anyone's control. The official notice of the broken engagement from the Collins family arrived for Jasmine the very next day. Evelyn's pride was torn to shreds. The board of the charity organization she belonged to recommended that she resign, citing that she had seriously damaged the dignity of the association. Day after day, she received looks of pity and ridicule from the very friends she had long looked down upon. The social status she had struggled so desperately to build crumbled like a fragile castle made of sand. The financial blow was even more devastating. When I stopped paying the loans, Jasmine's luxury car was repossessed, and maintaining the family home became difficult. Every day, my phone was flooded with dozens of calls and messages from them. "Haley, please help us." We were wrong. But it was far too late. I answered the phone from my father only once. He said just one thing: "I'm sorry." His voice was weak, tinged with the regret of a man who had spent years as a passive bystander to his wife's control. I said nothing and quietly ended the call. The lesson they needed to learn was not mine to teach. They would have to find it on their own. Several weeks after I completely cut off contact with my family, I found myself enjoying the view from my company's new office. Through Samantha Collins' introduction, we had secured a partnership with a global hotel group. The company had grown to over 100 employees and relocated its headquarters to a prime location in Manhattan. From the glass-walled CEO's office, I could look down on the very apartment where I had once been treated like a maid. But my peace didn't last long. One afternoon, I received a call from the reception desk. "CEO, 2 women identifying themselves as Evelyn and Jasmine have arrived without an appointment." I steadied myself and calmly replied, "Show them to the conference room." When I opened the conference room door, I found my mother and sister inside, both looking completely worn out and unrecognizable. The expensive designer brands were gone, replaced by faded everyday clothes. The moment I entered the room, my mother broke down in tears as if a dam had burst. "Haley, please, give us another chance. We were wrong. I was wrong about everything." "What are you here for?" My voice sounded cold and sharp, even to my own ears. Jasmine hesitantly opened her mouth. "I miss you, Haley. We're still family, aren't we? Can't we be together again? Like before?" "Family?" A dry laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "What you miss is Haley the CEO, not Haley the maid. If I were still the so-called failure struggling to find a job, would you even be here?" Neither of them could say a word in response. My mother spoke up, desperation twisting her expression. "If it's money, we'll pay it back. Everything you covered until now, we'll return it little by little. So please, just one more chance. What will people think of us if—" I took a document from my handbag and slid it across the table. "What's this?" "It's a restraining order application. I can no longer accept your attempts to buy me with money or hide behind your precious public image. If either of you shows up at my workplace or home again, I'll file it with the court. This is my final answer." Staring at the document, Evelyn and Jasmine trembled as if the world had just ended. Once, I might have felt pity for them, but not a single drop of that emotion remained in me any longer then. "Cruel? I wonder which of us is truly cruel." My voice remained calm but resolute. "For 15 years, you trampled on my dignity. The day I was bedridden with a 104-degree fever from the flu, Mom, you didn't show a hint of concern for me. You only talked about the dress you were going to wear to Jasmine's ballet recital. Jasmine, when you were heartbroken and crying, I threw aside my own important presentation prep and stayed up all night comforting you. But when I made a major mistake at work and was crushed, you just laughed and said, "Why don't you quit that job already?" You didn't even celebrate my birthday, and instead made me prepare a party for 49 people for free. You never once tried to understand who I was, what I dreamed of, or what I was struggling with. I stood up and turned toward the door. These would be the last words I would ever say to them. Don't ever show up in front of me again. This little family charade is over. From now on, I'll live my life surrounded by people who recognize my worth. Their sobs pierced my back as I left the conference room, but I didn't look back once. A year later, my company had grown to the point of having branches all across the United States, and I had firmly established my place in the business world. From time to time, I received short emails from my father. Your mother and Jasmine are now living together in a modest apartment. They've both started working part-time jobs. I never replied. It was the path they chose and the life lessons they had to learn for themselves.